Well, hello again, and thanks to all of you for taking part in today's panel discussion on engaging youth lessons from the German dual system of apprenticeship programs. My name is Rob Fenstermacher, and I'm the Chief Content Officer at the American Council on Germany. The American Council on Germany is a nonpartisan nonprofit organization based in New York that advances dialogue, engagement, and collaboration on vital economic, political, and social issues impacting societies in Germany, Europe, and the United States. We work with a diverse and inclusive global network of institutions and individuals on our programs, which serve as a core pillar of the Transatlantic Alliance, fostering mutual understanding, pragmatic problem solving, and positive change. Back in 2022 and 2023, the American Council on Germany implemented a series of immersive study tours to Germany. 3 with America Works, an initiative which is designed to increase the communication, coordination, and cooperation amongst manufacturing workforce professionals nationwide, and which is funded and supported by the NIST Manufacturing Extension Partnership, and another study tour in collaboration with the Center for Regional Economic Competitiveness and the State Economic Development Executive Network. All of these US networks, the 51 MEP centers across the country, and state governments and their workforce development offices are striving to find ways to improve the quantity and quality of American manufacturing workers and other workers, skilled workers, and one of those ways is to focus on apprenticeships, both for youth and adults. That's why the ACG, America Works, and the Center for Regional Economic Competitiveness partnered to allow American workforce development professionals to learn about Germany's dual vocational education and training system. This is a nationwide system that is dual in that it combines learning at 2 different venues: theoretical training at vocational schools and practical training in companies. Approximately 50 to 55% of German secondary school graduates, those kids aged 16 to 19, complete apprenticeships. Annually, this represents more than 1.3 million trainees completing apprenticeships in 326, approximately, nationally recognized training occupations. So this would be the equivalent of registered apprenticeships here in the United States. And 5.1% of all employees at more than 425,000 companies in Germany. 95% of dual vet graduates are employed, many by the companies where they completed their apprenticeships. So the goal of these study tours was really to identify elements, approaches, and strategies that could contribute to the expansion of apprenticeship programs in communities and states here in the United States. During the U.S. Department of Labor's first National Youth Apprenticeship Week, we're really excited to host this conversation with some of the professionals who participated in these programs last year, to hear about best practices, some of the lessons they learned, and some of the ways they're trying to implement the things they learned in Germany in their own communities and in their states. So today's conversation will be moderated by Matt Fieldman, the Executive Director of America Works, who I worked closely with at America Works to implement the earlier mentioned 3 study tours to Germany. Based at Magnet, the Manufacturing Advocacy and Growth Network, headquartered in Cleveland, Ohio, Matt works across the nation's Manufacturing Extension Partnership National Network and is a tireless advocate for apprenticeships. Joining him in the conversation are 3 wonderful former participants in the America Works and the CREC study tours. First, we have Shonda Anderson, who's the Director of Internships and Apprenticeships for the Kansas Department of Commerce. Shonda was on the CREC study tour in October 2023 last year and came back from Germany filled with ideas for her work in Kansas, where she's a passionate and tireless advocate for apprenticeship pathways. Welcome, Shonda. Thanks for joining us. Heather McKay, the Senior Vice President of Employer Engagement and Executive Director of the Strada Institute for the Future of Work. Heather also traveled to Germany on the CREC study tour last year, but actually participated in her previous position as the Executive Director of the Virginia Office of Education Economics, which is a newly formed office in the Commonwealth housed at the Virginia Economic Development Partnership, charged with examining linkages between education and the labor market. She too is a really strong advocate for expanding career pathways for youth. And last but not least, we have Raheem Nichols, who's a colleague of Matt. He's the director of the Early College, Early Career Program at Magnet, Ohio. Raheem traveled to Germany with the America Works program in June 2023 and saw many similarities to the really fantastic work he's doing with high school students in the Cleveland region to prepare them for manufacturing careers through practical training with employers. He has a really deep passion for working to transform the fortunes of the region's underrepresented youth, and I'm really pleased, Raheem and Heather, Shonda, that you could be with us today. So without further ado, I'm going to turn things over to Matt and let him continue the conversation.
Great. Thank you, Rob. And again, thank you for your partnership on these trips. They were amazing, and we learned a lot and had a really fun time along the way. So I just want to dive in with, why don't we talk just a little bit about what you actually do? Shonda, and then Heather, and then Raheem, tell us about the programs that you run, your role in your organizations, and include one fun thing from Germany that wasn't related to the trip that you just enjoyed about the country or the people themselves.
Sure. So thank you again for that wonderful introduction, Rob. My name is Shonda Anderson. I'm the director for the Kansas Office of Registered Apprenticeship. The Kansas Office of Registered Apprenticeship is the state apprenticeship agency. We are the registering agency for all of the registered apprenticeship activity that's happening across the state of Kansas and the training that's happening in the state of Kansas. So with that, I help lead a team of 6 and growing. We also have around, depending on the year, $8 to $10 million or so that we are managing to help grow registered apprenticeship programs across the state of Kansas. And we've seen some great leaps and bounds. We've increased nearly 55% over the last year. We've got more people getting involved than ever before. Our construction apprenticeship programs are growing, but we're also growing registered apprenticeships in teacher education and in registered nursing and IT and agriculture, and really trying to think big and outside the box on where we've been with registered apprenticeship than ever before. And then Germany,
yes,
the apple strudel. I think we ate apple strudel everywhere we went. And I had a goal to eat bread and pastries every day that I was in Germany. And I came back about 7 pounds heavier. So I think I hit that goal.
Important to hit those goals. Thanks, Shonda.
That's a very, very important goal.
Yeah. Heather, tell us about yourself.
Heather McKay. I am currently at the Strata Education Foundation, and I started there about 3 months ago, so I'm newly into the role. And I'm running 2 things there. One is the Institute for the Future of Work, and the other is the Employer Alignment Pillar. And so apprenticeships fit into that, as does lots of different work-based learning activity around the country. And I'm really looking at things now from a national scope. But as Rob said, when I went on this trip, I was in Virginia, and I was running an office there that was really looking at making better linkages between education and work. And so apprenticeships were a big part of that. And we were thinking about scale and implementation. And so the trip was really helpful in that regard. And in Germany, I just love the trains.
Yes, they always run on time, and they're always comfortable, and they have Wi-Fi, and yes, the trains are fantastic. Yeah. Raheem, tell us about ETC.
Thanks, Matt. So my name is Raheem Nichols. I'm the director of our Early College, Early Career program here in Cleveland, Ohio. We are a state-recognized pre-apprenticeship program where we place high school students into manufacturing internships. And so we currently work with 12 manufacturers throughout Northeast Ohio and 12 of our local high schools as well. We currently have 70 students we have going into internships for the summer of 2024. That's up from the 42 we had that just graduated from our program last week. So, our program is all about exposing these young people to careers in manufacturing. A lot of these kids they live right behind a manufacturing company and have no idea what it is. And so we just want to give them an opportunity to develop, get some new skills, obviously help their families financially as well. And so that's what our program is all about. As far as Germany, we went to a Greek restaurant one day that was absolutely amazing. Really loved that place and had a really a nice walk our last night there with Matt and a few others, where we took about an hour-long walk from the restaurant back to the hotel. But it was really nice, and I just really enjoyed getting to see. I believe we were in Berlin at the time, so that was really nice.
Right. Walking everywhere. And for me, it was the beer, just beer at every meal, lots of different flavors, and just really enjoyed it. Great. Oh, so let's dive into the meat of this, which is talk about the takeaways. What did you bring back, either intangibly or tangibly or both? Let's do the same order, Shonda, Heather, and then Raheem.
Sure. Some of the major takeaways I took back was that the United States is doing a lot of the same things. And I went with this sort of understanding or perspective that the system was completely different, that there was no way that we could take what Germany is doing it and apply it, for me, to the state of Kansas. And that was not at all the case. Yes, there are some things that are truly, the systems are just different. But really ensuring that there's, high quality employer engagement and high quality educational engagement, and even engagement from the chambers in developing these apprenticeship programs, and that the apprenticeship programs are truly, high demand, high wage, good jobs that are important to the economy. Those are all values that we can apply, and are applying to the state of Kansas. Yeah, I mean, I think that was probably the biggest takeaway for me.
I think
Shonda, were you able to bring anything? Were you able to implement anything in Kansas as a result of what you saw?
Yes. So actually, and I'm hoping that I sent the link to Rob. I'm hoping he'll share it out. So we do in Kansas, we do monthly dinner bell calls. And our monthly dinner bell calls are sort of a come one, come all. I have our example dinner bell in my rear view here. But it's a come one, come all across the entire state of Kansas. Anyone is welcome to join, and we learn about, registered apprenticeship activity, new rules that are coming out, best practices, things like that. And for the last several years, we've featured people from across the state of Kansas, and then also, people who are doing really wonderful things in registered apprenticeship nationally as well. Since coming back from Germany and knowing that Germany is really like the creme de la creme for registered apprenticeship and how it operates, we've since had on our dinner bells, we brought on, and I can't remember the name. Rob, you might have to help me. The gentleman from the high school training center that we met, he came on with students to talk about their registered apprenticeship program with Ford and some of the other manufacturing companies. We've also had on Bayer. Bayer is a large pharmaceutical company that we have facilities actually operating in the state of Kansas as well. So we had their German partnership come on and talk about the registered apprenticeship program that they have with Carenta. And since we've had further discussion with Carenta and how we can implement some of what they're doing in Germany with our bioscience and pharmaceutical manufacturing economy that's growing across the state of Kansas. And then my personal favorite was Porsche, which I had never pronounced it correctly before. I'd always called it Porsche. I was told I was incorrect. So we've since had Porsche on, and they had 10 or 15 of their apprentices actually jump on the call and talk about what they're doing and how they're doing it, and all the different elements and facets of where they intersect within that manufacturing company. And that was a very cool call, my favorite call. We had a lot of people from across the state of Kansas join that call. So we're definitely trying to intersect and integrate as much as we can. And then, further, I think also just having that background and understanding for how it works over there is helpful as well. But also knowing that Kansas, where registered apprenticeship sits in the state of Kansas, it's in our Department of Commerce, which is our chief economic recruitment arm for the state of Kansas. And we are actively working to pursue and recruit German and European countries. So having some grounding and understanding for how that educational system works helps with those recruitment efforts.
Very nice. Thank you. Heather.
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing that was most striking to me was all of the students that we got to meet within the companies, right? And seeing them in the spaces where they're learning about work and applying everything that they've learned in a classroom. We also met some students in classrooms who were in that portion of their programming, and you know, they really talked to us about shifting between the two, the classroom work and the work-based work, applying what they were learning. And there was a ton of pride among these students. And I think that's just something that I'd love to see grow here. The interest, the pride that this is, you know, an equal pathway to maybe a traditional college pathway that we might think of as the best pathway in our heads. But that this is a really wonderful opportunity. The students all had ideas about what their careers would look like. And I think if I walk into classrooms around the country here, many fewer young people know exactly what their pathway is going to look like, know what employment's going to feel like. And so I found that really exciting. And I went back to Virginia while I was still in my role there. And I thought, well, we've got to do better. And as I embark on this new job at the Strada Education Foundation, I'm thinking, how do we spread this, right? How do we spread these opportunities so that more students can get their hands into the work that they're going to be doing in their futures, learn if they like it, and also be better and ready when they get into that employment world and get paid along the way, right? So all of those things were really exciting. And I think for me, the students were the brightest spot, showing just the value of apprenticeships.
Great. That's great. One of my favorite things to do when I was in Germany was ask the apprentices, how do you spend your money? Because, and Rob, you can correct me on the exact number. I think apprentices typically earn like something like $2,000 a month while they're still living at home, literally 16, 17, 18 years old. What would a young person do with $24,000 a year? And it was just fun to hear. And I remember one in particular had a picture on his desk of his like 1950 Ford Mustang that he was investing in, and that he was rebuilding, you know, part by part. And I just thought, you know, it's so great, the clear idea of what they're doing in the future, as you mentioned, Heather, but also that they're just having fun along the way. I mean, many, don't get me wrong, many are using that money for basic expenses and, you know, or contributing to their households. But when they can, they also are having fun, which is great. Raheem.
Thanks, Matt. So as Shonda said earlier, you know, their system is so different, and just how much it's ingrained into the system there. You know, we operate a little differently over here. But for me, a lot of the mentorship that is happening within the companies, I just thought was really important. My program specifically, like, we consider our mentorship as like the secret sauce of what we do. So to have actual employee mentors working with the students, I thought was just fantastic. And so that's one of the things that we've actually tried to implement with our program for this coming summer, is that we went to our companies and basically said, hey, can you have your supervisors or managers apply to be mentors for our students? Because we didn't want our interns getting, I don't want to say stuck, but getting stuck with managers who've been at these companies 30, 40 years. And they're like, I don't want to deal with a 16, 17-year-old kid. Now, we really wanted them to have a positive experience. And so many of our companies now have implemented these on-site mentors for the students, in addition to the mentors that our program offers as well. And so to be able to bring that back was just really important. And one of the things that they talked about a lot over there was also just the parent engagement. And so one young man I spoke with was a legacy. He was like the third male in his family that, I forget the company he worked for. So to see even the legacy of manufacturing kind of go from generation to generation, I thought was really good as well. One thing that we tried to do better over the last couple of years is parent engagement with our program, because it's just really, you can't work with young people without the parents being engaged. And so this year for our orientation back in January was definitely the highest number of parents we've had engaged in our orientation and learning about what we do and learning about manufacturing just in general, because a lot of parents have a certain perception of what manufacturing is. And so to be able to open their eyes to what it really is, which is really good. And it's funny because at the end of the orientation, we have parents coming up to me and my staff asking, can we get them jobs and things like that once they hear some of the money that their students are going to be making. So just being able to make that connection with the parents and the community, I thought was really important, in addition to having the on-site mentorship to really help walk these kids, these students through as they're going through our programs.
That's exactly right. And let me let's dive into hands-on projects as well, Raheem. I know that's a piece of the youth apprenticeships in Germany, and you implemented that in Cleveland as well, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. And so our students start their program second semester of their junior year. And so throughout that first semester, we're doing basically focusing on soft skills and things like that. But these students also have the opportunity to do some job shadow days at the company they're going to do their summer internship with. And so what we found happening in previous years was that these companies will interview our students in the fall and they wouldn't see them again until June. And so when June comes, the students are walking into this huge facility with all these adults and they don't know what's going on. And so we said, well, how can we kind of ease some of that anxiety with our students? And so now they get the opportunity 2 or 3 times during their first semester with us to do hands-on projects at the companies. They built hammers. They've done other little small projects at the company, depending on who we're working with. And we also use a third-party training center that comes in and does hands-on projects with our students as well, whether that's virtual welding. They did some tube bending specialties this semester as well. So definitely trying to get the students their hands on things instead of just talking to them every week when they're coming down to the building.
Right, right. It's amazing to be in way too many settings in America. We say, hey, you want to work in manufacturing? Here, sit in front of this computer and take 12 hours of training before you can ever touch a machine or a device or a tool or anything like that. Shonda?
Yeah, I just wanted to add something to what Raheem and Heather said too. The pride that the students had was absolutely amazing. But the thing that I also took away from was the pride that the employers had in their registered apprenticeship program. I mean, they took full accountability and pride in understanding that they were educators and mentors to these kids. And I think so often, a lot of times in the United States, when you start talking about employer-employee or employer-student sort of engagement, it's a, well, what's in it for the employer kind of mentality. And for them, it was very much a, we're here to help push our society forward and create opportunity. And this is part of it. And I'm excited to be a part of it.
Yeah, absolutely. We never heard an employer say this is a waste of money or a waste of time.
Yeah.
And there was a sense of communal responsibility as well, that this is giving back. You know, we talk about corporate philanthropy and all these different things, but they're saying, you know, we give back by investing in our young people, and that's a powerful thing. So we talked about some of the things you have done back in your communities. What are some of the things you'd like to do if you could wave your magic wand? And then if there are barriers, let's talk about those barriers, because you know, maybe we can solve them together or something like that. So let's go the other way this time, Raheem and Heather and Shonda. But what would you like to do next if you could, if you can?
I think for us, and this is dreaming really big, is that we would like to find a way that we could pay our students through like the classroom portion of the program, because they don't start their internships until the summer. We can still find a way to have some type of paid incentive for them throughout that first semester, I think would be really good. And that's one thing that Monica, who's one of my team members, she went to one of the Germany trips as well. And that was like one of the things that she brought back with her, was like, man, if we could just kind of find that extra incentive to pay our students, you know, whether it's a stipend or whatnot, through the actual training portion before we get to the summer, we just know that that would be really effective as well.
Yeah, as I think about this, I think about kind of the regional collaborations that we saw. And I'm in a national role now and not in a state, but I think those regional collaborations have so much promise. And I think before I went, I didn't understand how important the intermediaries were to making it all function properly. And so, you know, I think those are some things that if a community were really interested, they could replicate some of those ideas. And, you know, maybe the state can play that leadership role and and a role as the intermediary, or nonprofit organizations or some other group, chambers even. So I think there's lots of possibilities to kind of replicate some of that community involvement and community work together to get an apprenticeship model going, so that it's not all on the employer and it's not all on the higher education institution. It's a much more cohesive ecosystem. And so I'd like to see that, and certainly we'll be looking around the country for communities interested in that.
Great. Yeah, we talk about sector partnerships, but they're generally loosely affiliated. These are mandatory, basically a mandatory membership in your Chamber of Commerce, and the Chamber of Commerce runs the apprenticeship. They oversee it. They do the metrics behind it, and the registration and the credentialing and all that good stuff. So they're very customer service oriented. We just don't have anything like that I'm aware of in the States. And a little more formality, and even peer pressure to formalize these relationships would be a good thing. Shonda, what would you like to do if you in Kansas or even nationally? But either way,
I say come to Kansas. Heather, come to Kansas. I think we're doing what we want to be doing, and for me, it's sustaining that long term. So everything sort of changed in registered apprenticeship in the state of Kansas a few years ago, and since then we really are engaging. It's not mandated, but we really are engaging much more viscerally and heavily. The Kansas Chamber of Commerce, the Greater Kansas City Chamber of Commerce, the Overland Park Chamber is now hosting a huge apprenticeship day down in Kansas City, Southern Kansas City area. We've got Hayes Chamber of Commerce engaged with us. So those are really awesome things. Just continuing those sector partnerships and continuing to get people to work with each other. And I think creating an economy for registered apprenticeship in the state of Kansas is really pivotal. I recognize the fact that we've developed out several multi-employer intermediaries across the state of Kansas, and they all sort of serve a specific niche market, but it gives businesses an opportunity to pick and choose who's going to be best for them, who's going to provide that diversity of service and that value proposition that's going to make it make sense for the business. But also just continuing to ensure that we're thinking outside the box. I love that Germany is continuing to think outside the box, and how can we continuously improve the registered apprenticeship system and improve our educational system. And they're saying, well, that we don't have enough going on, but they've got 20-30% of their young people in a registered apprenticeship. I mean, hey, that's what I want in Kansas. So, it's a really awesome thing. And I think, for us, it's continuing to change that perspective.
Right. Yeah. And I think that you mentioned the continuous improvement. They have the systems in place to continuously bring together all the various parties, the companies and the academic institutions, et cetera, to review, to phase out ones that aren't relevant anymore, to create new ones. It's, so often we pat ourselves on the back for launching something, but we have no system to improve it. And we aren't thinking, what's the long term? How are we going to keep it adapting to the ever-changing world around us? And so I really appreciate that, that there's that system in place where everyone's getting together, I believe regionally on a quarterly basis and nationally on a yearly basis, but everybody's getting together to keep those things moving forward. So that's great. What do you see as the roadblocks, and how can we overcome them? I mean, Raheem, you mentioned paid training. Is it just money, or is it something else? Because we're starting to see some paid training, which has been exciting.
Yeah, I mean, I also think it's just a general exposure. People just don't know what manufacturing is. And so, one of the things when we go to our schools to recruit is we talk about breaking the myths of being dark, dirty, and dangerous, and teaching them that it's more creative, it's innovative, and things like that. So I think exposure is a major barrier. I mean, even for me, I didn't know anything about manufacturing before I started working here. And so, but to know that you can really have a full career and a real life in this world is just really important. And, we're working with generally majority inner city, underserved populations and schools. And so for them, this is just a whole new world for them. They just don't know anything about it. And so I just think, from fourth grade, I know some of the places we talked to when we were out there, they were starting their exposure activities in fourth grade. And I think that that's something over here that we can begin doing, is just exposing these young people earlier and earlier to these pathways and build that interest up earlier and earlier.
Yep. The ninth grade shadowing just expected as part of is expected as part of the culture. And, we have nothing like that. And so it'd be really nice, just ninth grade, you start going out and seeing some jobs. That would be really good.
Yeah, and
Heather,
I know one of the, I'm sorry, Matt. I was
go
just
ahead,
gonna say,
Raheem.
one of the companies that we engaged with, they had, again, back to this mentorship piece, they had some of their employer mentors working with fourth graders at a local school. And so, from fourth grade up until they have to make that decision on what pathway they want to take, like they're being exposed to it. And so I just think that's really important.
That's right. The companies really own their workforce, which is
Absolutely.
Heather, from your national perspective, what are you seeing as barriers?
Yeah, I mean, talent shortages are a problem all over the country in manufacturing and in many other fields. And apprenticeships could be a really nice tool to start to fix some of these challenges and problems and help train workers so that they're ready, right, during their process. Culturally, they're ready skills wise, and they've got the background knowledge that they need in terms of academics to get on the job and contribute to a company right away once their training is over. And so there's a lot to be said for that, I think. But I think companies in the United States maybe need some help, right, in order to make this feasible for them, understand how to implement it. That ecosystem approach might be the way forward. There might also be national efforts that could help companies who are interested in starting an apprenticeship, small or large, begin that process. I'm sure that help is going to be required if we are going to scale for employers, because they've got a lot on their plates. And I think that contributing is probably on their minds to society, and also thinking about filling their own roles is on their minds, but how to do that, I think, is the challenge.
Absolutely. And I can speak for the federal government when I say that we've invested millions and millions and millions of dollars into hands-on technical assistance for manufacturers who want to get off the ground. Even every state has its own incentives as well, but the federal side can do wage subsidies, and we can absolutely get involved. So if anyone on the call is an employer or knows employers, if they even mention apprenticeship, we'll be there the next day, ready to hold their hand and get them over the finish line, because that is a huge focus of Department of Labor, Department of Commerce, and more. Shonda?
I think for me, it's perception change. There's still so much of and I hate this, a less than mentality around skilled trades. I talk a lot about my dad. My dad is the smartest man I know. He can build any home to code. He can build a set of stairs to code in an afternoon with my, pink tools from Kmart. So he's an incredibly intelligent guy, and he did a unregistered apprenticeship program under his father to take over a welding business, and he has nothing to show for that. And that really sucks. So developing out more of a system where we can actually create a renaissance of respect around the skilled trades, and create a renaissance of respect around these very high quality earn and learn programs. High quality earn and learn programs that are connected to its own training system, like the unions, or maybe community colleges, or maybe not, or maybe advocate for pathways to further training at community colleges and universities and things like that. I think it's just a matter of getting people to see past this word apprenticeship and actually dig deeper and understand what it is, and viscerally the level of return on investment that it can have, not just to a business, but to the apprentice and to a society as a whole. So, and I think that Germany's doing a lot to really push through that.
Right, that's right. I always come back to, I wonder if we're doing ourselves a disservice by calling this big word apprenticeship. And if we just said this is paid hands-on training, if we just make it, with a career path, if we just make it much more easy to understand for people. We'll get to, yeah.
We could always call it Padawans. We know that Padawans were apprentices for the Jedis. So, I mean, that's a, potential. It is, may the fourth be with you sort of week. So that's always an option. But I do actually prefer the word apprenticeship. And I think that's part of changing the perspective, is actually having pride and self-confidence that I'm an apprentice. I'm being paid to learn an amazing skill that's going to push me to a better area or a better opportunity. And the journeyman workers that are working with the apprentices, they're getting a chance to really impart this great knowledge they have up in their brains on the next generation. That's a point of pride.
Great, that's great. We'll dive into some of the questions in the chat shortly. One last question. Let's just go around and Raheem, kick us off. Actually, Heather, you can kick us off since we've been kicking off with Raheem. What are some of the keys to employer engagement? That really starts and ends with the employers. What are you seeing as a way of selling? What are the employers looking for? How do you sell them on it? What's their what does it take?
Yeah, I mean, that's an interesting question. And I'm pretty new in this role and just starting to have these conversations with employers around the country about interest in apprenticeship, barriers to apprenticeship, and sort of what to do. And I think some of the conversations that I've had are some employers are starting their own apprenticeship programs, right, to just solve their own problem internally. And I think there's a great value in that, and then having the partners come in to help, right? Because if you decide yourself, we've got a problem and we've got to solve it, it's more able to be sustainable and scalable over time, rather than just doing the common good, right? Doing CSR. If it doesn't benefit the company, it might not have that stickiness. And so I think that's one model that I've seen that's really interesting. Another model that I've paid a lot of attention to are these intermediaries who are able to spread and help and kind of take the load off of putting it all together. And then once it becomes part of a culture, it's easier, right? And the intermediary has less work to do. But starting something is always hard. And so getting that assistance, I think, is really useful. And I hope to keep going around the country and learning more about what folks are doing, interest that employers have, and barriers that exist. I think there's different stories probably everywhere you go, but as we find the commonality, we can find the solutions.
Raheem.
Yeah, so I think that for me, one of the questions that I always ask our companies that have been with the program and also new companies, is why do you want to be a part of the early college, early career program? And once we discover the reason why they want to do it, we kind of build on it from there. And so for some of our companies, is they really want to develop a talent pipeline. And so instead of taking the risk of hiring people off the street that may or may not stay, and they're in retention issues and things like that, all right, well, let me get this kid at 16, 17 years old, train them for the next 2 years once they graduate high school. And now I have somebody that I've established a real relationship with. I know what their talents are, I know what their gifts are. They can become a full-time employee from that point. And so we've also invested into our companies as well. So any company that becomes a partner with our program, we go in and we do a training on how to work with a ECE, early college, early career student. And so I think the fact that they see we're willing to invest in them as much as they're willing to invest in us has played a major part, and companies want to come on board. And so again, when we're bringing new companies on, we usually have them speak to one of our veteran company partners as well to see the benefits of our program and why it's necessary and why it helps. And things like that. And then we also do quarterly strategy meetings with all of our companies. So we bring everybody in the room together and we talk about what's working, what isn't working. Okay, why did this work so well with your company, but it didn't work with our company? And so I think the fact that we just have that investment from both sides has made us really successful, and makes other companies want to come on board as well. So
great, that's great. And that's the role of the intermediary, right? Connecting companies, connecting education in the company, and just really being very hands-on, that quarterly meeting of making sure everything's going smoothly, and if it's not, stepping in. Shonda?
That's just it. It's just creating an employee easy button. if it's not easy for the employees to engage, to set up, to maintain, to manage, they're not going to do it. And they've got to show, great return on investment. Being that said, we're sort of in a situation, especially across the state of Kansas, where our unemployment is 1.8%, I think, right now. We've got counties that are at a 0% unemployment. Everyone who has a job has 4 of them in the county. So there's also a mentality that employers cannot hire who they're wanting to hire anymore. They've got to grow their own. They have to grow their own. And so being able to systemize that, track it, report on it, and continuously improve on it is something that's really valuable. And that's what registered apprenticeship, I think, brings to the table. But again, we've got to have the easy button. And that's where those multi-employer intermediaries are so valuable.
Absolutely. Let's see. Let's head to the chat, and we can start talking to our attendees. Can you talk about the logistics for the hands-on experiences? Raheem, this sounds like something you should answer. Working with engineers to create short-term projects for pre-apprentices, balancing the engineer's bandwidth is tricky. Obviously, every company has limited resources. How are you working with companies to ensure good hands-on experiences for the young people?
Yeah, so I think foundationally it kind of starts with the fact our partnership with the schools actually. So just to give a little bit of background without going too far. So we partner with 12 schools. And so in that partnership, our students are with us, their junior year, they're with us an hour and a half, 1 day a week throughout that first semester. Then their senior year, they're with us 3 hours, 1 day a week. And so we've been able to use that designated time frame that they know is there for the year, and which is what allows us to put those hands-on projects in place. But again, it's not the engineers at Magnet that are doing the projects with our students. It's the third party that we're using that's doing the hands-on projects with the students. And so the onus isn't really on us on having to create those projects, because we have somebody that's doing it for us, and they just work within the time slot that we have with our students.
And then Sarah's asking, Shonda, can you talk about how you've adapted the German dual apprenticeship model to Kansas and what that might look like?
Boy, that's a tough question. So I think we're still in the process of doing that. And I think the United States in general is in the process of doing that. I think some things are going to make a lot of sense and work. Others are maybe not. Kansas is a state apprenticeship agency, which means that we are the registration agency for all registered apprenticeship programs in the state of Kansas, but we follow the federal guidelines. So 29 CFR 29 and 30. So from that angle, all of the registered apprenticeship programs in Kansas are getting registered. So that's similar to Germany. Where the chambers in Germany are the conveners of the apprenticeship program, the developers of the apprenticeship program, and in some cases, the maintainers. I don't know that we'll be able to replicate that so much, but trying to get the chambers more engaged in what we're doing to ensure that we are building programs that make, economic development sense is obviously something important. What Kansas has done that's somewhat similar is that we've developed an apprenticeship council. So we have a council of 14, 15 people now. State law, we're supposed to have 9, but that council is made up of a very diverse group of representatives across the state of Kansas that either A, understand apprenticeship, or B, understand workforce development challenges. And they're very diverse in terms of where they live geographically, their union, non-union representation, race, ethnicity, background, industry, etc. So we are getting a collective, larger understanding and mindset on what apprenticeship programs we're approving in the state of Kansas and which ones we are not approving in the state of Kansas. So I think definitely ensuring that once a program is developed, it's sustainable, it meets economic need and sense, it has appropriate wages attached to it. Those are all things that I feel like Germany has nailed down and done really well, that we're trying to continuously get to that point, if that
Absolutely.
makes sense.
Yeah. You mentioned the number 55% increase. What was that 55% again? Can you?
So we've had a 55% increase in total number of registered apprentices year over year in the state of Kansas.
That's incredible. Wow.
Yeah. So, but that's still, I think I need to update the numbers on the website. So don't look at them right now, but we had 4,400 last time I updated it, which was in October. We have more since then, but Germany, I mean, you're talking
Sure. But
thousands and thousands.
55% a year grows really
Yeah,
fast.
I mean,
It's good.
yeah, that's a pretty significant increase, and we've had just exponential increase in funding opportunities. But I do want to touch on the funding thing. Funding and money is great, but funding and money don't build things. People build things, right? And so having funding, having investment, having grants, those are all great, but the registered apprenticeship programs that get developed need to be totally self-serving to the needs of the business that is actually ultimately going to sponsor and pay the apprentice. And so always having that employer in mind is something that is incredibly important and valuable. And that's how Kansas is developing and growing our registered apprenticeship system. And I do think that that's very similar to Germany. Rob had asked a question at some point in time, you know, what did employers think about their support of the registered apprenticeship system there in Germany? And overwhelmingly, it was, this is important, this costs money, but we have to do it in order to maintain and sustain ourselves long term and ensure that we have a workforce that's going to stick with us. So when we talk to employers that are on the fence of registered apprenticeship, our question is, okay, their question is, what if we train them and they leave? And our question is, what if we train them and they stay, right? You know, an untrained employee or an employee that's not continually progressing and creating a return on investment to an employer is just a drag, and that doesn't help anyone.
Right. I heard a great analogy about apprenticeship from a conference I was at recently, and the guy said, it's like going through a buffet and there's that one weird item that you just always skip over. You're like, I don't want that on my plate. But apprenticeship has moved from that one weird item to now it's a main course, right? You're going to stop by for the chicken or the beef or the salmon, and apprenticeship has finally become the main course of a buffet, which is very exciting.
And I think it's so diverse, right? I mean, it can be chicken, it can be beef, it can be salmon. I mean, we can develop it so many different ways, and it's so versatile that sometimes it's a little hard to sort of get it worked out. But once it's worked through, it makes, you know, complete sense. Absolutely.
That's exciting. We talked about a lot of different things. I want to ask one final question, then Rob can answer some of the bigger questions that are in the chat, sort of the systemic pieces of Germany. Off the top of your head, can you think of one company visit or one apprentice that you met that stuck with you, or even a trainer or something along those lines? For me, I'll kick it off. For me, we were at a company called SGL Carbon. They make all sorts of things out of carbon, which obviously is very lightweight and very strong. And the apprentices made a foosball table out of carbon. It must have been the most expensive foosball table in the world. I mean, it's not like wood or plastic. This is, you know, airplane grade material, but it was really fun to play on. And I really enjoyed playing with the apprentices. And they had made the individual characters, the individual pieces of the foosball table. So that stuck with me as hands-on, fun. It shows the investment of the company and the young people, and on and on and on. So, Shonda, is there something that stuck with you? One visit or something?
I mean, the one thing that stuck with me, Portia was very cool. Getting to like feel the leather that goes into the vehicles. I'll never forget that. But I think I think the investment and the pride that the businesses had in their registered apprenticeship program and the stories of the young people. And when we're talking young people, we're talking 16 to like 30. and 32. So it's not just this young quote unquote age bracket. It's a much broader perspective, but knowing the stories that they had and the impact that they have had on those fellow employees, I think was pretty inspiring.
Heather, what's stuck with you?
Yeah, we were at a small manufacturing facility, and I think there were two things that stuck with me there. One was that we were seeing apprentices in engineering, in manufacturing, but also in office work, which I thought was really great, right? We often think about apprentices as for the trades, but I think we're broadening our perspective of what that could be. And seeing at one company all those different kinds of apprentices was really interesting. And I remember speaking to some of those students who were apprenticing in accounting and other areas of office work, and someone asked them about not finishing, and they looked at us like we were crazy. And they said, "You can't not finish. Of course you finish. We're going to complete this, and this is going to be our job." And so just tremendous to see that path to employment and also the versatility.
Rob, you want to take it from here? Oop, don't forget to unmute. It wouldn't be a webinar if someone didn't unmute.
Yep, and it would, of course, be me. I just want to thank you first for all of this great conversation, but there are a few more questions in the chat, the Q&A, that I thought I'd try and answer. And one of them was the question of how do we convince U.S. employers that apprenticeships really are not just a short-term fix, but it's a long-term investment, and that you need to have companies that are working together and understand this and are more collaborative in that process. And I guess before I answer, I have kind of an anecdotal answer from the United States, but I think that's one of the things you see in Germany, which we heard about today, is how everybody's invested in this. And so companies recognize they can be die-hard competitors, but they recognize that they're all going to benefit in the end by getting the skilled workers they need. So even if they're investing in an apprentice who's going to be there for 3 years, that apprentice most likely will stay with them if they've done a good job and they've built that kind of relationship with them. But that apprentice might leave and go to a competitor, but just as likely is that an apprentice that was trained by the competitor is going to come to that company, right? So everybody's in it together and everybody's benefiting. And one example where I saw this is now starting to develop on the regional basis, which Heather brought up, and sort of this desire of wanting that to happen, is in Phoenix, where some of the semiconductor companies, Intel, TSMC, are working together with the local community college there. They're working together with the workforce board of the city of Phoenix to put together an apprentice semiconductor program. And this is a perfect example where everybody's recognized Phoenix is in a dire need of skilled workers for the semiconductor industry. And they realized that if they didn't bring together all of these stakeholders and sort of get away from this idea that we're competitors, they weren't going to get the skilled workers they need. And so here was a perfect example of really kind of taking a mini model of the German system where you had all of the key stakeholders working together to put together a training program. So I think that's just one example. It's doable to answer that one question. And the last question that was in the Q&A was a question about if you go into the apprenticeship program, does that somehow preclude you to going on to further higher education after the fact? And the answer to that is no. We saw many examples, I think all of us on the call today, of apprentices who did the apprenticeship program and ended up working maybe for a few years after that, but then went on and did further education and were able to get further qualified as a masterman in their field, or to go on to higher education and become an engineer. And there are, in fact, many examples of individuals who were apprentices and are now CEOs of companies, whether they be big companies or small companies. And so companies, I think, recognize that and really see a value. I think we heard throughout that there is an understanding in Germany that apprenticeships are just as valuable as individuals going into higher education, and that they are striving to create pathways between them and connections. I think a phrase that I often like to use is that Germany is a system sometimes without flexibility, and we're flexibility without a system. But I think Germany is getting better, right? They're trying to create ways to create these different pathways to move back and forth. So
yeah, and just on that note, I think the greatest strength of this is the greatest weakness of both systems. So our system is incredibly decentralized, and you've got every county doing it its own way. Their system is incredibly centralized, and everything flows down from the federal government, or at best at the state government level. And they both have challenges and opportunities. There's a magic middle that no one's reached, but there's a lot to learn from if we were to swing the pendulum from this incredibly decentralized to maybe a little bit more, give the federal side a little bit more just in terms of standards and coordination. That's all.
Matt, that is a great segue to how I wanted to end things today. I think this was a great conversation. I really appreciate all of the insights, both into the great work that you're doing in your different organizations, in your states, and your communities, but also that you were able to bring in some of the takeaways that you got from Germany. And I think one of the things that we've all recognized when we do these trips is that we're not trying to say, take the German model and implement it in the United States. You could never do that. But that there's clearly various elements, aspects, takeaways, things that can inspire your work that we can be learning from one another. And that's really the goal that we have through these initiatives, is bringing together Americans and Germans to look at the common challenges and the opportunities that exist on this very important issue of apprenticeships and educating our future workforce. And so again, I appreciate all of your input. You saw in the chat, we tried to share a lot of information about the German education system, links to the various programs, webinars that Matt did with the America Works folks. If you want to get more information on other takeaways, I would urge you to have a look at those. We've also included a lot of the links to the summaries of our trips. We will do a follow-up email to everybody who attended today and those who weren't able to attend so that you have access to that information. So again, thank you so much. I hope you have a great day. And if you want further information about apprenticeship programs in Germany, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. I'll connect you to all of the folks that were on the call today. So thanks very much, everybody.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Rob.
Auf Wiedersehen.